Welcome on into the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode number 16 of 2026. We're going to be taking a look at a preview for round 3 of the 2026 AFL season today. We'll be running through all 7 matches coming up this weekend. We'll also have a look at our Brownlow leaderboard after round 2, our MVP leaderboard, top 5 ranked players for every position so far this year, and much, much more. So stick around, plenty to get through today. Let's jump into it. If you're new here, I'm John. We do this podcast twice every single week. Every Thursday, which is this one, is our preview episode for the round coming up. And then on Mondays, we do a review episode. So every single week, 2 episodes. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. This goes live on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube every single week. So make sure you follow your favourite platform, or all 3, if you so wish. Let's jump into it. That's what we're here for. Let's have a look at our Brownlow leaderboard after round 2. At the moment, we're only showing the top 5, because after the top 5, there's about 12 players on 3 votes. So starting off with number 1, leader at the moment, Christian Petrarca. He got 3 votes opening round from us, 3 votes round 1. To sit on 6, obviously got injured in round 2, so did not poll any votes that week. Nick Dacos, he's on 5 after 2 weeks, a 3 in opening round, followed by a 2 in round 1. Clayton Oliver's also on 5, Harry Sheasel from North Melbourne on 5, and Marcus Bontempelli, the best player in the competition, according to us, is on 5 votes after 3 matches. So that's how our leaderboard looks so far. In our review episodes each week, we do go through our Brownlow votes. They also get posted on Instagram, Twitter /X, Blue Sky, every single week straight after the game. So follow along. We'll do this update every week as well, just to keep on track of where we sit in the Brownlow. I try to do the votes based on how I see the umpires seeing the game, not necessarily who I think was the best 3 players. So it's an attempt at trying to get the most accurate votes for the end of season when the Brownlow gets actually announced. MVP leaderboard after round 2. This is the top 10 if you're new around here. Top 5 players from both teams every single match get votes. Top 5 players in our rating system, the All Aussie Rules rating system. Get votes. Winning team get top 5 get 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2. The losing team get 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. If there's a draw, then you split the gap between them to be 7.5, 6, 3, 2.5. No, 1.5. No, I've missed one. Anyway, you get the point. Halfway between the top and the bottom, the win and the loss. So leaderboard after round 2 is led by Marcus Bontempelli. No real surprise there. He's had 3 great games, 24 votes from his 3 matches. Second place is Christian Petrarca, who was on 20 after the first 2 matches. Didn't poll on the weekend. Cal Wilkie, 18, key defender, first non-midfielder. Noah Anderson on 16. And then we've got a 3-way tie for 5th between James Sicily, Max Gawn, and Murdoch from West Coast. He only played 2 career games. It's polled both times. Unfortunately, he's done a little bit of a hammy, so he's going to be out for a little bit of time, which is a bit disappointing, but it is what it is. 15 votes for him and the other 2. 8th place is a 2-way tie between Zach Butters and Jack Sinclair on 13 votes. And in equal 10th spot is Mark Pitternet and Timmy English, 2 ruckmen that have had solid starts to the year, sitting on 12 votes after round 2. Next up, we've got our highest rated players across after round 2. So this is combining the 2 matches based on their positions. Makes sense, I think. Oh, didn't mean to do that. That's what I meant to do. General defender, so far, Jack Sinclair way out on top. He spent most of last year in 1 or 2 as the general defender. Next up, we've got 3 Collingwood players. Crisp and Dacos have had runs in the midfield as well. Dan Houston also has had a little bit of inside mid-time, but not much. So Houston, Josh Dacos, and Jack Crisp, all very, very similar rating. And Wayne Milera had an outstanding opening match in round 1 against Collingwood, and then wasn't quite as highly rated last week in round 2, but still top 5 at the moment. Key defenders, we got Cal Wilkie out on top, followed by James Sicily and Harris Andrews. Charlie Coleman is an interesting one there. He had an outstanding first game when they beat Port Adelaide, but his game the next week was nowhere near as good. We'll see how long he can stay in the top 5. And Isaac Quain is an interesting one because, I mean, obviously he's not typically a key defender, but due to injuries to Howe and Moore and Reef McInnes, him and Maynard have both been playing key defender over the first couple games. General forwards, we got Miller from Gold Coast just out in front at the moment. Joe Richards was outstanding on the weekend. Pendlebury had a great opening round game. Max Hall has had one of the best games of the season so far. And Nick Watson, who's been really consistent and putting up some really good numbers to start the season, is 5th place. Key forwards, we got Jack Lukosius, who's only played the one game, so take that for what it is. But he was really good against the Bombers. Jeremy Cameron is 2nd, then Josh Tracy, Aaron Norton, and Jack Gunston in the top 5. Inside mids, Christian Petrarca leads the way. Only 2 of his games count towards his rating. Obviously, the 3rd one, I think he played. Oh, no, actually, all 3 might count. He might still have the highest rating. Bontempelli, 2nd. Noah Anderson, 3rd. Errol Goulden, who's obviously out injured now for a while, he sits in 4th. He'll drop out of that because he won't have played enough games after this week to qualify as a ranking. And Zach Butters in 5th place. Outside mids, Murdoch, who's played 1 week on the wing, 1 week more as a general forward. He's way out on top. He obviously won't be playing over the next month or so, but we'll see. Hopefully for him and for the Eagles, he can come back and firing when he's fit and ready. Bailey Williams in 2nd, Tanner Bruin in 3rd, who has had some inside mid-time, Matt Carroll, and then Braden Cook. And top 5 ruckman so far this year, Max Gawn, Tristan Cherry, Ned Reeves has only had the 1 game where he's played more than 50% game time, Tim English in 4th, and Luke Jackson 5th after 2 weeks. Well, 3 weeks, technically, I guess. So that's highest rated players in our All Aussie Rules rating system so far this year. As we go through each match, you'll see a bit of a snippet of team by team top ranked players as well. Speaking of games, let's jump into them. Thursday night footy kicks off at GMHBA Stadium. It's Geelong hosting the Crows. Adelaide into Victoria for the 2nd time this year, having beaten Collingwood 2 weeks ago at the MCG. They now go down and face the Cats at the Cattery. As you can see, their position ranks, that's the highest rated player for each position for both teams, and their overall position ranking. So, as you can see, Geelong, Lawson Humphries, a little bit lower than he'd like to be at the moment. And you work your way through that list. That's where they sit. I'm not going to read out every single player from every single team. It's just more so something to look at and take notice of, I guess, as we go through. These 2 teams, where do they stand? Geelong have a really good record against Adelaide. 8-2 over the last 10, including the last 5 have gone the way of the Cats. Last time the Crows beat the Cats was round 1, 2021. So that was a different time, different world, but also was a year that I think Geelong finished above Adelaide, surely. I think, yeah, I don't know. I can't remember where Geelong finished. They might have just missed finals, maybe. I can't remember. Offensively, I think Geelong, you take out the numbers of their first week and they don't look too bad. Obviously, opening round, they were pretty terrible. And then the first half against Fremantle, they weren't great. But they did start to put it together after that. I think a lot of this game is going to come down to where the style of play, I guess, we get from Adelaide. Last time these 2 teams met was Gather Round last year. And Adelaide got out of the blocks really well and throughout most of the first half looked in control of the match. But Geelong ended up coming back and winning by 19 points and just absolutely tearing them apart. We've seen in Adelaide a couple different variations of Adelaide so far. We've seen basically mainly slow ball movement, a lot of kick mark kind of football. And then in the final quarter against the Bulldogs, that really opened up and their scoring started to really improve. So will we see that from the outset this week, or will they go back to that slow style football? Both of these teams struggle in the clearance game so far this year, but the Crows have been really good in the contest, whereas Geelong have not. So that's going to be a fascinating watch in this game to see how that kind of shapes up. So far, Geelong have not been able to stop oppositions from scoring. So that's another factor worth looking at here. Obviously, they've played 2 games and they've conceded 125 in opening round and then 100 in round 1. Which is not ideal, certainly, but I think we will see that certainly improve across the year. They've obviously played 2 teams that are expected to go quite well this year, and that continues this week, playing a third. Adelaide scoring, their games have been reasonably high scoring, not massively, but 79-93 in round 1 and then 88-94 in round 2. So a bit less than the scoring of the Geelong games, but still reasonably high. It's a game that could easily go either way. Adelaide are going to be missing some players. Teams haven't officially been announced yet, but Dawson's been announced that he's not going to be playing. So that's a big out. There's still a few other injury concerns at the Crows at the moment. So if they're ripe for the picking, this is probably the week that they are. Their backline's been holding up really well. Their key defenders, Josh Worrell, has been great. And yeah, but he might be out. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know how this game will play out. There's plenty of different versions of this match, I think. It's quite a difficult one on paper, I think, just with a couple outs, mainly the Jordan Dawson one. Just makes me think that Melbourne might be able to take control of this. It's also a matchup where they probably don't get hurt for maybe not having the best ruck combination, the Cats here, so I think that will also help them. So I think it's just a matchup that probably does shape up reasonably well for Geelong if they can keep the Adelaide Crows forward line from scoring too many goals. That's going to be their number one priority right now. They've been conceding too much scoring so far in the first couple of weeks. There's no doubt about that. Like, they're giving up over 30 shots per game, which is just too many. You're not going to be finishing top 4 or top 6, I don't think, if you're conceding 33 shots per game. So they've just got to tidy that up, and I think we'll see a big change. So their backline needs a little bit of improvement. I think their ball movement maybe also needs a little bit of improvement. And if they can get that sorted, and also maybe contested footballs have been a bit of a struggle for them early season. Those are probably the main areas for the Cats to focus on, I think, going into round 3 against the Crows. Next game is Friday night. It's at Marvel Stadium. It's Collingwood v the Giants. This one will be another fascinating watch. Obviously, the last couple times these two teams have met, it's been opening round in 2024 and in 2025. Both times, Collingwood kicked very inaccurately and GWS walked away with comfortable wins both times, including 52 points last year. Before that, Collingwood had won the 3 before that, the prelim final of 2023 by 1 point. Round 9 of 2023, Collingwood won by 60-odd points, and 2022 in round 15, Collingwood won by 11 points. So it's an interesting matchup. Obviously, the Giants also have a lot of injuries. Jack Buckley got added to that list as well, so their key defence is in a little bit of trouble. But if you're going to have key defence issues, it's probably against Collingwood that you want to have a big cause. The key forwards of Collingwood have struggled at the moment. All 3 players that have played key forward for Collingwood this year in both games are ranked in the bottom 25 players in the AFL so far this season. So their key forwards are really, really struggling. As you can see, Tim Membry is ranked 54th as a key forward so far this year. I think there's only 60 that have been ranked. So all three of the Collingwood forwards in the bottom 6 key forwards so far this year. So that is an area that Collingwood need to work on, and probably beneficial for both teams in a way that this is the best opportunity the Collingwood forwards are going to get, but also GWS key defence stocks that are obviously missing their best 2 key defenders now in Buckley and Taylor. Maybe they won't get found out quite as much. The ruck battle is going to be interesting. Darcy Cameron v Kieran Briggs. Obviously, Jack Riccardi has been playing support ruck / key forward. The key forward stocks of the Giants are a bit hit and miss so far this year. Obviously, Collingwood do get 2 key defenders in Howe and Moore back in this week. It's going to be interesting to see how the Collingwood team kind of lines up and shapes up. They're also bringing in a debutant in Oscar Steen. So there's 3 ins at least for Collingwood this week. They've made some big changes from that loss to Adelaide. So so far, the Giants have looked okay in most of their time on ground, except for the last time they were at Marvel Stadium. They really struggle against the Bulldogs at Marvel. The last 2 times they played them there, they've lost by 80 plus points. I think that's as much to do with playing the Bulldogs as it is playing Marvel. We'll get a good look at them here. They'll be very focused on not putting in as bad a performance as they did 2 weeks ago against the Bulldogs. So I think that will be a focus, and we'll see how that kind of plays out. At the moment, Collingwood have been absolutely smashed in the contested football. They've done okay in the clearance game. Granted, they've played St Kilda and Adelaide, who are not maybe the best clearance teams either, but they have been absolutely smashed in the contested football. So I think that's, if I was in charge of Collingwood, that's probably one of the key focuses I would have had over the last week and a half, preparing for football again, would be focusing on that contested football, because they're minus 19.5 per game across their first 2 games this year, which is an absolute shellacking, there's no doubt about it. These 2 teams have never met at Marvel Stadium, so that's also a fascinating watch here. See how that shapes up. Obviously, yeah, I don't know. We'll see a fair bit about both teams, I think. It'll probably... I mean, the Giants are waiting to get players back. Obviously, their key defenders, the main ones, they're going to be missing some players for the season. But their midfield's held up okay. We'll see what happens. You just think being in Melbourne probably benefits Collingwood a little bit and might put them over the edge in this one. They will be starting favourites in this one, but I think it will probably be a pretty close game. Next up, we head to Saturday afternoon, and we got still same ground, Marvel Stadium. Quite a few games of football at Marvel, including 2 on Saturday. This is the first of them. St Kilda play the Brisbane Lions. Both teams will want to win this. Obviously, St Kilda did get their first win of the season last week, so they're off the duck. But Brisbane coming off the bye last week and 2 losses before that, there's going to be a big focus for them. Trying to get their first win of the year before Easter weekend, when they play Collingwood on Easter Thursday. These 2 teams match up heavy favoured to Brisbane side over the recent years. 9 out of the last 10. The only time in the last 10 matchups between these 2 teams that St Kilda won was back in 2021, when they won by 32 points. They met once last year, and the Lions won it by about 40-odd points, 118 to 73. It's a matchup that you'd think, on paper, Brisbane win. I don't think they're terrible at Marvel Stadium either, Brisbane. They've had some bad games there. They're still missing players, which is going to be the big issue, like no Harris Andrews still. We'll see if McCluggage is back. Obviously, Sam Draper did play just before the bye, so he's got a game under his legs now. We'll see if he's a bit better for that. On the St Kilda side of things, bad start to their year, couple losses, but they held on just last week against the Giants, so that was a really important win for them. If they were to follow that up with a win over Brisbane, that would get their season right back on track. If they were to drop this one to the Lions and all of a sudden be 1-3, it's certainly not doom and gloom. It's not the end of the road, but they would certainly need to focus and work really hard to catch this gap that they're giving to other teams up. Contested footy, both teams are very good at it so far this year. Clearance game is really good on the side of Brisbane. St Kilda haven't been bad, but Brisbane have been really good at clearance game, but just haven't been able to do anything from that. So far, at least, that's what we've seen. Other than that, it's shapes up as historically you'd have to think Brisbane just win it. But there's just a couple players still missing. They didn't look great against Sydney before the bye. I think they'll look better here. No, Harris Andrews always hurts them. He's their most important player, in my opinion. What he does in the back line, he controls that whole back half of the ground really well. He rarely gets beaten, but even when he's not affecting the play, he just positions really well that teams either have to try and go through him, which is very rarely successful, or they have to go around him, which is also not the ideal strategy because that's not where the team wants to move the ball. So, yeah, he's a big out. He's out this week. He's missing the Collingwood game as well, so he's not back till round 5. Brisbane just have to try and go into damage control, I guess, at the moment and try and get a couple wins over the next 2 weeks until all of their players are back on the field and ready to go. So we'll see how that shapes up. This matchup, I think you still have to kind of go with the Brisbane side and just trust them a bit. I have more faith in them than I do St Kilda at the moment. But coming off the bye, down in Melbourne at Marvel, there's a few factors that just have me a little bit worried about this match in terms of Brisbane side of things. But yeah, that's how I see it. Next up, Saturday afternoon football. We've got Fremantle v Richmond. This will be over at Optus Stadium in the afternoon. A bit of afternoon football in the West. We've got the Dockers and Richmond. Dockers coming off a win last week. Richmond yet to get their season going with a win yet. And it's hard to see this being the first one. The Dockers, they're looking good. Round 1, sorry. They lost just to Geelong after putting up a really good fight and being 5 goals up at one point. Last week, they looked good. They were solid against Melbourne. Their forward line is flying. Bolton in the midfield was outstanding to go along with Sarong and Brayshaw. Sarong obviously wasn't outstanding last weekend, but he was great the week before. They have some really good signs. Their scoring looks good. Their ball movement looks good. I mean, the defense hasn't been terrible. They've conceded 180 points in 2 weeks, which is not great, but it's not terrible. This is the week, though, that defense really shines, I think. Richmond averaging 65 points a game. I can't see a world where they get more than 65 against this Fremantle defense, if we're being completely honest. The Fremantle midfield should be too strong in the clearance game, contested football game. They'll get first use of it, and if this forward line even remotely fires between Tracy and Voss are in good form. Amiss was good-ish in the first game, not so good in round 2. And then the smaller, medium-sized forwards as well. Dudley played great on the weekend, so it's hard to see a world where Richmond can compete in this matchup. Over in the West, everything just points to a Fremantle domination. Perhaps it's not going to be huge domination. They didn't absolutely tear Melbourne apart last week. They did in spurts, but not across the whole game. But I would have to say it's more one-sided than that one. Chuck in the fact that Richmond do have some injuries. No Nankervis is a big one. That really just opens the game up for Luke Jackson and Sean Darcy to really dominate. So watch out for them to dominate out of the middle as well. Like, it would have been a tough matchup for Nankervis. Now that you're moving into the backup ruckman for Richmond, it makes it even tougher. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it, really. Fremantle won the last 3 matchups. Last time Richmond beat them was around 13-20-23. Most things point towards Fremantle, and I think that's pretty obvious on the stat sheet. So we'll be quietly confident tipping Fremantle, I think, for this matchup. Saturday night football is probably not one you're going to write home about. It is Essendon North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium. Maybe it'll be game of the round, who knows. It's been a weird start to both of these teams' season. North will be starting favourites, as you would kind of expect based on the results so far. Essendon have played 2 games and been quite comfortably beaten in both of them by about 60 points. And haven't really looked fantastic. Last week should have been more than 60 points, as well. It was 63 in the end, but they kicked 5 out of their 10 goals in the last quarter. North Melbourne started the season really well, beating Port Adelaide, but followed it up with a really disappointing game against the Eagles last weekend. So they'll be looking to bounce back, and they should. Whether that happens or not, what should happen and what does happen is never the same. But you'd have to think on paper that it's just going to be one-way traffic in favour of North Melbourne. Having said that, it's a matchup that Essendon is very, very good at. They've won the last 10 matchups against these 2 teams. You got to go back a long time, pre-COVID, for last time the Kangaroos beat the Bombers, which is not a great sign for the Kangaroos, but you'd have to think they're going to break that hoodoo this week. You'd have to think. The stat sheet certainly suggests that. They're dominant in clearances. Essendon are not. Their ability to create shots is better than Essendon. Their ability to defend the ground has been better than Essendon so far. There's not much that suggests to me that Essendon are going to put up much of a fight other than just an absolute spray that they've copped this week, just firing them up. But do they have the talent to back it up? Maybe. They do have some really good young players. Obviously, they copped another injury in Mason Redmond on the weekend, so that's a disappointing one for them. But yeah, I don't know if I was searching for a way that Essendon are to win this game. Right now, based on what we've seen so far this year, I don't know where it is. It would take Nate Caddy kicking probably 6 goals. He kicked 4 last week. He would need at least 6. It would take players like Zach Merritt and their whole midfield group at least breaking even with the Kangaroos midfield group, and somehow just finding a way, because North over recent years have not really had that much trouble scoring the football. They've had a big issue stopping other teams scoring, so that's where North Melbourne need to focus on in this one, I think. Whereas the Bombers just have been so far this year, and for the last 13 games last year, really struggling with most facets of the game. So there's certainly a lot more upside right now on the Kangaroo side, and for that reason we just have to tip the Kangaroos, even though they have had an awful record against the Bombers over the recent years. Moving on to Sunday football, we kick off in South Australia with Port Adelaide v West Coast. Back-to-back home games for the Power, coming off a really good win against the Bombers last week. They get a really, really good opportunity here to win 2 in a row. As good an opportunity as you're going to get. If they had won against North Melbourne, maybe people would be starting to not write this team off, but that North Melbourne game opening up their season in round 1 really, really got them off to a bad spot. But 63-point win against Essendon, if they can follow that up with a comfortable win against West Coast, that will be really handy. Obviously, some injury concerns. Rosé's out for a long time, or potentially a long time, we don't know yet. So we'll see how that plays out. And obviously on the West Coast side of things, they've got a couple injury issues of their own, but they are coming off their first win in like 15 or 16 matches. They were really good against North Melbourne. After going down 5 goals in that first quarter, to turn it around, they were fantastic. They did it unconventionally. They did it with a lot of young players kicking goals. Murdoch, who won't be playing this week. Obviously, Dersma, the number 1 pick from last year, did well. Harley Reid played probably his best game since his opening season. Elliot Yeo, having him back out there, was really good. Liam Baker was good as captain. So they showed some really good signs and some really good positive moves in terms of where they're progressing. So that, I think, is really quite beneficial. It's not going to be like that every week for the Eagles. Like, it's still that's still a long way from actually competing against all teams on a regular basis. But it's a positive sign. If they can get within 5 or 6 goals of Port Adelaide, I'd consider that a pretty decent result for them, as they continue to develop this young team and continue to work on that sort of stuff. So that's how I see it at the moment. Whether that plays out or not, we'll see. But it was a positive sign, certainly, for them on the weekend. Port Adelaide, no surprise, have a really good recent record against West Coast, seeing that West Coast have been down and out for quite a few years now. The last 4 have gone the way of Port Adelaide. Last time West Coast won was 2021, which, if you think back, was, I think, the last time that the Eagles did not finish in the bottom 4 on the ladder. One game left to look at. It's also a Sunday afternoon, but this one's at the MCG. It's Carlton v Melbourne. This is a big game for both teams for many, many reasons. Carlton coming off the bye. They're sitting 1-1 after losing disappointingly by quite a big margin in opening round against Sydney. They just held on in a scrappy affair against Richmond, had the bye. Now they come up against a team that pre-season you probably would have been backing Carlton, but Melbourne have looked quite good so far this year. They were really good in their first game against St Kilda. Round 2, maybe, it was always going to be a tough matchup against Fremantle in Fremantle. I think they'll be better for it. They've got a much different team than we've seen from Melbourne over recent years. Max Gawn's still the number 1 ruck. It's going to be an interesting matchup, him versus Pittonet. Where do both teams score goals might be an issue, potentially, that we find in this game. Certainly on the side of Carlton, I think Melbourne have shown a better variety of creating goals from different avenues throughout the year. But defensively, both teams kind of struggle as well. So we'll see how that shapes up. Obviously, Wiedering is hugely important for this Carlton team and in their defence stocks and being able to stop other teams from scoring. But, yeah, I don't know. The midfield battle probably slightly edged towards Carlton. Forward battle, maybe. Forward and defence is probably pretty even as well. I just see it being a very tight contest that goes right down to the wire, but who knows who will win. Last 4 times these two teams have met, Carlton won all 4, including the 2023 semi-final by 2 points. Last time Melbourne beat Carlton was back in round 12 of 2023 when they won by 17 points. And before that, Melbourne had a really good run against Carlton. So the history of this matchup is pretty even. It's certainly a matchup that will be fascinating to watch. Both teams sitting currently on 1-1 after 2 games. And you'd have to, I don't know. I feel more positive about the Melbourne side so far this year, just based on the fact that Carlton only just got over the line against a Richmond team that kicked 9 goals, 17. And the week before, they got absolutely decimated after halftime to lose by 10 goals to Sydney. So that's where I see this one. But, yeah, I would not be surprised to see either of these two teams win, if we're being completely honest. Speaking of, these are my tips for this weekend. It's been a rough old start to the season so far, but hopefully we can turn it around this week. We're going with Cats on Thursday night footy against the Crows. Just because it's at their home ground, we've got them by 12 points. Similar story, Friday night, we're going Collingwood because it's in Melbourne by 15. If the Giants didn't have as many injury concerns, I'd probably be comfortably tipping them, I think. I've gone Brisbane over Saints by 17 points, but don't be surprised if the Saints win this one. We're going with Brisbane just because of their record against Saints. We trust that even though no Harris Andrews, not having great key defenders is probably manageable against St Kilda, if we're being completely honest. They're not the best key forwards in the competition. Collingwood got through reasonably well against St Kilda, having no real key defenders using, well, they had Billy Frampton, but then using Quainer and Maynard as key defenders. So we're gonna trust the Lions there. Dockers should be way too strong for Richmond, if we're being completely honest. I've gone Kangaroos over the Bombers. I know Bombers have a really good record against the Roos, but from what we've seen from Essendon so far in the first 2 weeks, you just couldn't confidently back them. Port Adelaide should be too strong for West Coast. I know West Coast did well last week. They're getting better. I don't think they're quite ready to beat Port Adelaide in Adelaide, even though Rosie's out. And then the final game, I've actually gone the Demons to win by 6 points. They are technically favourites at the moment. It's a game that I definitely could see going either way, and in my tipping competitions, I probably will change that tip 6 times between now and Sunday afternoon. I'm not confident either way with either team in that matchup. So that's a wrap. That is another episode of the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. That's episode 16 of the year. That was our round 3 preview. If you're new around here, don't forget to hit that follow or subscribe button, depending on what platform you're on. 2 episodes every single week. We pump out the content. There's plenty of other content with other videos on YouTube. TikToks, most days we do at least 1 or 2 TikToks. We've got Instagram. Plenty of content goes up on Instagram, X/Twitter, Blue Sky, All Aussie Rules everywhere. Just look for the logo. Go check it all out. We do a full rating system. We do plenty of stuff here at All Aussie Rules. So check it out. Let me know your thoughts. I'm always open to hearing and listening to you. So yeah, let me know what you think. We'll be back on Monday to review in the next episode of the podcast. Before then, plenty of content. If your team is playing this weekend, good luck. I hope they play well, and I will catch you on the next episode.